Hi everyone, this is a quick how-to video on how to identify the length of your crank in the event you need to replace it. Common issues involve cross-threading the thread where the pedal connects to the crank. Common on kids' bikes, to be honest, common on any and all bikes. If you're taking the pedal on and off on a regular basis, getting it in and out of the boot of the car, for example, as I do, or for example if you've got kids or kind of inexperienced riders who a little bit of a habit to pedal backwards as they're riding, the pedal can basically come loose, and as the rider then begins to start to pedal forwards, it can rethread and it can basically churn up that thread in there, and either seize up entirely so that you can't pedal it and ultimately need replacing. So there's a few things to consider. First of all, different brands have different types of spline. Some are, for example, are only compatible with their own branded bottom brackets. Some are a bit more generic, and this is the one I actually need to replace. So I've had issues previously with pedals basically cross-threading and damaging the actual thread. But on this one, this was a recent donation, and you can just about see the actual crank itself has been damaged, not entirely certain how, but it basically means that the bolt that holds the crank on, this is a diamond tapered kind of bottom bracket slot, let's say, and it slips on, and then the bolt will tighten it on and basically push it and hold it onto the bottom bracket. So because of the damage to the actual crank itself, I can't get the bolt back on, so I'm looking to replace that one. Now, it's fair to say that on many crank arms, it'll actually be printed on the reverse. On this one, it actually says, here we are. You can just about see it if the resolution's sharp enough. It says 170. Common measurements are 170, 100, and 175 millimeters. But if it doesn't say that, which is common on some kind of older bike or perhaps on children's bikes that have been dug out recently to kind of get the kids back into cycling now that we're getting back into some nice weather, you might have to measure the crank arm to identify which size that you need, and you can get them from all over the place. MTB Outlaws have some wonderful community partners, including several second-hand or refurbished bike retailers who supply replacement parts, so always worth considering before you go straight to the common online retailers. So in order to achieve this, we need some scrap paper. I've got a birthday card I'm going to recycle, a pen or a pencil, and a ruler. You can use a micrometer, you can use a tape measure. I'm just going for the basic household options. So you basically sit your crank down, and what we're looking for is basically the center of the bottom bracket spline and the center then of the pedal thread. So you're not going the full length of the crank, you're going center to center. An easy way to do this, you might be able to see just on the paper, as I've attempted this once before. It only needs to be, as accurate as you can, but an approximation will do. Be conscious that there tends to be dirt, gunk, grease, grime in and around these, so I'm hoping that among the viewers isn't my other half who's going to tell me off for doing this at the dining table. But ultimately you're going to make two marks on your piece of scrap paper so that you can measure it. I would use gloves for this if I were a little bit more forward thinking, but I think my gloves at the moment, my maintenance gloves, are actually dirtier than the cranks are, so there we are. So I've got two lines, I've just extended them ever so slightly so that I can see roughly where they are, and looking at this, my trusty free ruler that I got from a fair, I believe at some point, Army be the best, I can see quite clearly that according to my marking it's actually 176 millimeters, which I think is easy enough to identify it as 175 millimeters, which does actually, for that particular crank, for the SRAM, does also actually have it printed on the back. I say printed, it's indented on the actual. You probably can't see it. The resolution's a little bit loose on this one, but it does actually identify 175 on the crank itself. There's some other factors to consider. So I've mentioned you can get some longer ones. You can get all different kinds of cranks. You can get oval cranks, you get circular cranks, the number of teeth on the crank, I should say the chainring itself rather. Some of them are fixed on the drive side. Others are, and the opposite side tend to be just the arm. Yeah, it's not a foolproof system, but in terms of just measuring the crank arm, which I say is certainly common if you're taking pedals on and off, and you either lose the thread or there is damage to the crank itself that you need to address or replace, then that's basically how to measure it. To remove a crank from the actual bottom bracket is a different process altogether, and you may well need a special tool. Perhaps I'll look at that another time. Thanks for watching.